Today we are going to do the insertion of the collar into the blouse and the insertion of the sleeve. I've gone ahead already and stitched the blouse together, matching your shoulders, your side, put in your dots, okay? So we turn the blouse onto the right side so we can now put in the collar. Now the shoulder seams are turned to the back and pinned in place. And you can clip a little of your seam allowance off. It's a little smaller. Alright, I've gone ahead and stitched the ends of the two ends of the collar already. You clip the corners as well, so it won't be too bulky when you turn it over. And you turn the collar over onto the right side. Use your pin and bring the corners out so they'll be smooth. And I normally fold in half, double check to make sure my ends are even and my center is marked. When that is done, I pin the collar in place so I won't have any movement when I'm pinning it into the garment. You make sure it's lying down real flat. Okay, so we have the right side of the garment turned up and the collar is going to go on top. So we start at the back neckline, and when you're pinning the collar, you hold the collar and the neckline together, because you don't want to have any stretching on your neckline. So if you notice, I'm pinning onto the collar. So the blouse is actually put on to the collar. See, like that. Keep your edges together and make sure there's no stretching on the neckline. Notice where I put the pins because I'll be stitching over the pins. Now you have to be careful for stretching on the garment. So you make sure the garment is lying flat and there's no stretch. Okay. So I pin from the center back down to the center front. Okay, so that's 1/2 of the collar, see? On 1/2 of the neckline. So I'm going to put the other half on. And to make sure you're balanced, you can just put it like this and set your collar there. So you don't have any movement, okay? Because the right side should be the same as the left side. Front. Now I'm going to make sure mark where the collar stops on this side, so I will get it exactly the same thing on this side, and I'll put my collar right there. In that case, one side won't be longer than the other one, they'll be the same. Okay. Because once you're sewing against the grain of the fabric, it will stretch away from you, so you have to be very careful. Good. collar. So if you look at it, it's like that on the garment. Now, remember we have cut our facing and we say the facing covers the raw edges. So here I pinned and stitched the back facing to the front facing. Okay, and I serge the edges for neatness. So this will now come over the collar. So we match the center back to the center back again. So there you would have the collar between the blouse and the facing. Do not remove the first set of pins. Use a different set of pins to pin on the facing. So the collar will stay in place. Okay, you match your shoulder to shoulder, and on the facing I open the seam allowance so it's not so bulky. Okay, and I match my front here to here. The facing will come down the entire front of the blouse. So you make sure you match all important points and then pin in place. Okay, when all of this is in place, then you will stitch. Now I stitch from the center back out to the front, just like how I pin. In that case, if there's any stretching in the neckline, you will go in the same direction. So I'm now pinning the facing down the front. Alright, so I'll do the other side before I stitch. So I match my shoulder again, facing, matching the shoulder seam, shoulder to shoulder. And the front matching as well, at the points there. Remember, you're not to be stretching when you're pinning. You're to be making sure everything is very relaxed. Okay, so we go down the front on the other side. Now when we're stitching in the collar and the facing, our seam allowance is 1 centimeter. 1 centimeter for the seam allowance when you're stitching in the facings and the collar. In the other areas we use 1.5 centimeter. Okay, now I'm finished with my pinning. Now remember, you can baste, but I'm going to sew it, pin and sew. I start from the center back, and I'm going to 1 centimeter. Making sure my edges are together. Keep your needle down and turn to come down the front. center back and down. Take out my pins, and then in sewing we clip all the curved necklines, all the curved areas on your neckline so they will be relaxed. I'm going to go ahead and clip afterwards. The facing goes onto the wrong side like that, over onto the wrong side, okay. Alright, now I'm going to clip my allowance to make sure that everything will lie down flat. And I test to make sure the ends are good. So the collar must be even, same length, and your break should be the same length, okay? That seems quite good. So after that is checked, you turn over and you clip across the peak like this, and then we're going to clip the allowance out, especially at the end of the collar here. If you're using lighter fabric, you can do this the other method, a snip. But this is a heavier fabric, so we have to use a clip to make sure it is relaxed. So we do that along the entire neckline. Right along the neckline, all around. You'll see the difference afterwards, how the facing and the collar will relax itself in place. Clip, 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 all the way down to the other side. Across here again. And clip where the collar ends to relax it. Careful. facing will go and will lie flat on the inside. Okay? See? Because the neckline is clipped. Alright? Now we're going to top stitch the facing at the back, not at the front, because the front is where you're going to have your breakneck. This is a breakneck. If it's a round neck, you will top stitch the whole thing around. Okay, but since this is a break, we do just the back. Alright, so from shoulder seam to shoulder seam, you put the allowance out onto the facing and then you stitch on top. And that will hold your facing in place. So there's no need for you to hem the facing down. You can tack just at the shoulders. Alright, see the top stitching there on the inside on the collar, and notice that the seam allowance is turned onto the facing like that. So on the right side you will not see the stitch. There's no stitch on the right side showing. Alright, and then now you will measure and decide where your break will be. And from there, you can top stitch as well. So you form your break. That's your break neck. Call it in. And your butt will come below. Remember, this is a bodice, so it fits at your waist. If you're making a blouse to wear on an over skirt, you'll have to add the amount you want below the waist to this. Alright? Now I am going to do the sleeve. Again, pin your seam allowance in place, which is the underarm here, the side, and the shoulder. Okay, so those are pinned in place. And we are going to prepare the sleeve. Now I've already stitched the underarm of the sleeve. This is stitched first. Alright, you get a better fit when you stitch the underarm first, so you get a circle to work with. Remember when we did the sleeve, we said the lower part of the sleeve is the front, the higher part is the back. It's important that the front goes to the front and the back goes to the back. I tend to pin the seam allowance to the back, and that helps me to make sure I don't make any mistake on where is the back. So you can pin it like that, you know this is the back. Now to ease the sleeve in, we have to put 2 rows of gathering threads. To get the gathering thread, you put the machine on the longest stitch length. Alright? And you just stitch 1 centimeter from the edge. Quite good. It's important that you keep your distance from the edge, same it does affect how you put the sleeve in. Okay. You come from the underarm about 10 centimeters and stop. You don't leave this gathering thread under the arm. Alright, that's 1 thread. Then we're going to put the other thread, and you put your presser foot right beside the first thread and stitch. Remember, I put the stitch length regulator on 4, which is the longest stitch length for my machine. That makes the stitch long and loose so we can pull to get our gathers. Alright, good. So those are my 2 lines for the gathering. I put my machine to regular stitch. So there you have your two lines of gathering thread in the head of the sleeve. Okay? Alright, so you get your blouse and you're going to put it in now. Keep the blouse on the wrong side like that. The wrong side must be up facing you. Keep your sleeve on the right side, and then you put right sides touching. set the underarm first and pin in place. All right. The method we say to put your sleeve is ease the sleeve in, because you're going around curved edges, so we have to ease as we go. So after I fix the underarm seam to the side, I'm going to put the center of my sleeve to the shoulder seam. Remember, the seam is where the two pieces of materials are joined, that's the seam. So the clip out must go exactly there. Alright? After this is done, we're going to be using our gathering thread. Now I stitch on the right side of the sleeve. So I'm to pull the bobbin thread, so I have to pull the wrong side, okay? I hold both threads together at the same time, and there you get gathers. So you pull, and you're going to spread the gathers out to the top of the sleeve, because we're going to form what we call the cap of the sleeve. So you pull the gathering thread up like that. And after you pull it out, you're going to ease it back out, because we're in a plain sleeve, not a gathered sleeve. But without the easing, you will not be able to get a proper fall of your sleeve, you see? So it's important that you do that. And you cannot just put your gathering thread at the top, it won't work. That's why we have to take it from further down. So you can give the ease on the sleeve, all right? So I do that side, and I do this side as well. So you work from the side up to the center. Okay, when you're pulling your gathering thread, you must hold the fabric so the thread doesn't break. Alright, so I pull my thread up and I ease back the thread out down here. You don't want any ease. And the cap of the sleeve is from here to here, at the top of your shoulder. That's where the cap is formed. Alright, so I set my cap. And I'm going to keep my edges together. So I'm working where I can see the sleeve, because the sleeve I'm putting it into the garment, and the garment into the sleeve. So you're looking at the sleeve instead of looking at the garment. You're pinning on the sleeve side. And I'm forming the cap, and that's at your shoulder. All right, a cap over your shoulder. Okay. I set the cap on that side, and I set it on the other side too. Now, if you remember, both curves are cut differently, so you'll find that there's a little difference on the sleeve and on the bodice. And that's why we say we ease the sleeve in. You cannot just put it edge to edge. If you need to ease anything off, you have to ease it off. Alright. So I seam to, I set my cap up good. Whatever you see, that's what you're going to get. See? So that have a little buff there. Okay, so that looks good. You sit there. And you can turn it on the right side and look at it as well. Put your hand in and look at it and see what it looks like. And what you see, that's what it will look when you put it onto your body. Okay, so that is quite good. Alright, so we do the top and we're going to do under the arm. So if you remember, when we were shaping the head of the sleeve, we went down 3 or 4 at your quarter point, right? That's the point that we work on last. So we do the cap and we set under here, see? That's now under the arm. Alright, so you're going to line that up and make sure it must be lined flat. No stretching on the fabric at this point either. I'm pinning the pin where I'm supposed to be stitching, and so I can get a better idea if my sleeve will lie flat. Again, I suggest you base the sleeve before you stitch it, but I'm going to do the pin and sew today. So I won't be basting, I'll be stitching without basting. Alright, so after we pin the underarm, we are at a point now where the curve started. And this seems quite good. So I don't have much ease in here. Okay. Sometimes if you look, there's just a little bit there. You take that off afterwards. Alright, so I go to the front and I do the same thing. So under the arm, this is under the arm, under here, you make sure it is lying down flat. See the sleeve, look at the sleeve, it must be flat. If it's not flat, when you put on your garment, the sleeve is going to be pulling. And you don't want that, you want the sleeve to fall properly when you put it on. Now you have to make sure you do a lot of practice with the sleeve. It takes time to be able to identify where you need to adjust as you go. So you need to practice your sleeve a lot. You can just do half of a bodice, half of the front, half of the back, and the sleeve, and put it in and take it out as many times so you can get the practice. If your sleeve is not fitted properly in the garment, your garment don't look good. So you have to make sure your sleeve is properly fitted in the garment. Okay, so this doesn't look too bad. Alright, so I'm going to look at it on the right side. So I put it like this before I stitch, put my hand in, and it will show you what you're going to get. So that looks quite smooth. Alright, that looks good there. I do the same thing at the back. We're not having any sudden bend anywhere. So this looks good as well. Okay. Now when you put your hand in the sleeve and hang it like that, put your hand in, notice finger, it's forming my shoulder. Good. Notice how the sleeve falls straight like that. If it's not falling like that, it's incorrect, right? It must fall like that. When you pull on the garment, this part, the under part, must be lower, must be shorter than the outer part. Under here, you can pull on it, it must be shorter. Alright, so that's your sleeve. Now when you're stitching the sleeve, you stitch on the garment side. So when we are pinning in the sleeve, we pin on the sleeve itself. When we are stitching, we stitch on the garment. We start at the underarm and stitch around. Remember to avoid stretching when you're stitching in the sleeve, because you're going on the cross grain, and that tends to stretch. Remove your pins. Now let's see what we have. Alright, so we turn over, now the pins are out. And there you have your sleeve looking quite good, quite smooth. is a plain sleeve. Right, so this is very nice. Now the gathering thread, one of them will be shown on the right side of your sleeve, so we take that one out. So after the sleeve is put in, you remove the gathering thread. Okay, you don't need the gathering thread again. Okay, now when you're putting on your buttons on your blouse or shirt for the men, the ladies, we put left over right. Oh, sorry, the men is left over right, and the ladies are right over left. That was wrong a while ago. The men, we put their button or buttoning left over right. So the buttonhole is on the left side. For the ladies, the buttonhole is on the right side. Yeah, that's correct. So we'll do left over right for men and right over left for ladies. All right, good. So here we have completed. Oh, you could top stitch below where your button will fit as well on the front of your blouse. You turn the facing onto turn the other ones onto the facing below where the button fits. And top. So it holds the facing in place. Alright. So you can top stitch here as well. Below where the button is, below where the break. Put your button below. Okay, so then let's just recap the sleeve. You put the gathering thread to ease the sleeve in. You match the underarm of this garment to the underarm of the sleeve. And you match the shoulder of the garment to the center of your sleeve. Okay? And then you form the cap of the sleeve by pulling on your gathering thread. You pull on your bobbin thread when you're forming that. And then you set the underarm of the sleeve. Make sure it's lying flat on the arm. And then you complete the sleeve. When you're sewing in the sleeve, you sew on so that's your break neck, and that's your blouse there. When you're sewing the sleeve, you sew on the garment side. When you're pinning, you pin on the sleeve. Okay. That's it for today. Enjoy your sewing.